North Korea has once again captured global attention after launching more than 10 ballistic missiles into the sea. And while missile tests from Pyongyang are something the international community has seen many times over the past decades, the timing, scale, and geopolitical environment surrounding this particular launch make it far more significant than it might initially appear. Because, according to South Korea's military, the missiles were fired from an area near the capital city of Pyongyang at approximately 1:20 p.m. local time and traveled eastward toward waters off North Korea's eastern coastline. And this happened at a moment when the United States and South Korea are in the middle of major annual joint military exercises designed to test their readiness and coordination in the event of a potential conflict on the Korean Peninsula. These exercises, which involve hundreds of troops along with tanks, armored vehicles, engineering units, and combined command structures, are known as the Freedom Shield drills, and they are intended to strengthen defensive cooperation between Washington and Seoul. But North Korea has consistently argued that such exercises simulate preparations for an invasion, and that disagreement over military drills has been one of the most persistent sources of tension in the region for decades. As news of the missile launches emerged, Japan also became involved in the unfolding situation when the Japanese Coast Guard reported detecting what appeared to be a ballistic missile during the event. And Japan's national broadcaster, NHK, later stated that the projectile seemed to have landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone, which means it did not enter Japanese-controlled waters, but still triggered monitoring systems that track potential threats in the surrounding seas. Shortly afterward, the United States Indo-Pacific Command released a statement confirming that it was aware of the launches and was consulting closely with allies and regional partners to assess the situation, while emphasizing that based on the current evaluation, the missiles do not appear to pose an immediate threat to U.S. territory, American forces, or allied nations. However, the phrase "no immediate threat" can sometimes be misunderstood because it does not mean the event is insignificant or harmless. It simply means that the missiles were not heading directly toward populated areas or military bases. And in many security situations, the greatest risk is not the initial launch, but the reactions that follow if governments interpret the signal differently or respond in ways that escalate tensions. At this stage, the confirmed facts remain relatively limited but important. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say that more than 10 ballistic missiles were launched. The launch area was near Pyongyang. The time of the launch was approximately 1:20 in the afternoon local time. The missiles traveled toward open waters to the east. Japan detected at least one possible projectile, and the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command has stated that it is monitoring the situation and coordinating with regional allies. Yet several critical technical details are still unknown, including the exact missile types used in the launch, the precise ranges and altitudes of the projectiles, and the confirmed splashdown locations in the sea. And these details matter greatly because different missile systems represent very different levels of capability and strategic messaging. Some missiles are short-range systems designed primarily for regional defense scenarios, while others are capable of traveling much longer distances and therefore carry broader strategic implications. Until radar tracking data, satellite monitoring results, and official intelligence assessments provide more clarity, analysts must rely on confirmed information rather than speculation about what specific weapons were used. The timing of the launch is also significant because the Freedom Shield exercises taking place between the United States and South Korea are among the largest joint training operations conducted by the two allies each year. These drills simulate complex battlefield situations and require coordination between multiple branches of the military, including ground forces, engineering units, and logistical support teams. One part of the exercise that has drawn attention in recent reporting involves river crossing operations using armored vehicles and bridging equipment, which are technically demanding maneuvers often required in large-scale military operations. From the perspective of Washington and Seoul, such exercises are meant to strengthen defensive readiness and ensure that Allied forces can respond effectively to any crisis. From the perspective of North Korea, however, these drills are frequently portrayed as rehearsals for offensive operations, and that difference in interpretation has fueled tensions for many years. Historically, North Korea has often responded to these annual exercises with missile launches, artillery tests, or strong political statements in order to demonstrate its own military capabilities and signal that it is closely watching the activities of the Allied forces. In that sense, today's launch fits into a pattern that regional observers have seen repeatedly over time. Yet there is another layer to this moment that makes it particularly interesting for analysts studying the situation. In recent days, there have been discussions about the possibility of reopening diplomatic dialogue with Pyongyang, including reports that South Korean officials met with leaders in Washington to discuss potential pathways for renewed engagement, and comments suggesting that former U.S. President Donald Trump would be willing to meet again with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un if diplomatic conditions allowed. When talk of diplomacy occurs at the same time as visible military exercises, it can create a complicated signal environment in which North Korea perceives both pressure and opportunity at the same time. In previous situations, Pyongyang has sometimes chosen to demonstrate military strength in order to increase its leverage before entering any potential negotiations. Missile launches can therefore serve multiple strategic purposes simultaneously. They can act as deterrent signals, demonstrating that the country possesses operational missile systems capable of being launched quickly. They can provide training opportunities for military personnel who manage launch equipment, fueling systems, and command coordination procedures. They can draw international attention back to North Korea and ensure that its security concerns remain part of global diplomatic discussions. And they can reinforce domestic narratives within the country about technological advancement and resistance to foreign pressure. Another detail that stands out in this event is the number of missiles involved. Launching more than 10 projectiles suggests a level of operational coordination that goes beyond a single test of a new system. In military analysis, a single launch often evaluates the performance of a specific missile or component, while multiple launches conducted in sequence can demonstrate the ability to coordinate launch crews, manage logistics, and potentially overwhelm defensive systems through volume. Although there is no confirmation that this was the intention behind today's event, the number of launches naturally attracts attention from defense planners who study how missile forces might operate during a real conflict scenario. At the same time, it is important to understand that missile launches into open water are often used by countries as a way to test weapon systems while avoiding direct territorial violations that could trigger immediate retaliation from other nations. Even when missiles land harmlessly in the sea, they still allow engineers and military commanders to gather valuable data about propulsion systems, guidance accuracy, and launch coordination procedures. That means these events can carry significant strategic meaning even when they do not directly threaten populated areas. Looking ahead, the next 24 to 72 hours will likely provide important clues about how this situation may develop. Analysts will be watching closely to see whether North Korea conducts additional missile launches, whether governments release more technical details about the projectiles involved, whether South Korea or Japan adjust their defense postures or alert levels, and whether diplomatic messaging from Washington, Seoul, Tokyo, or Pyongyang begins to shift. In many previous crises involving missile tests, the first launch was only the opening stage in a series of actions and responses that unfolded over several days. For now, however, the confirmed picture remains straightforward. North Korea launched more than 10 ballistic missiles toward waters off its east coast, while joint military exercises between the United States and South Korea were underway. Japan detected at least one possible projectile, and the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command has stated that it is monitoring the situation and coordinating with regional allies. Yet several critical technical details are still unknown, including the exact missile types used in the launch, the precise ranges and altitudes of the projectiles, and the confirmed splashdown locations in the sea. And these details matter greatly because different missile systems represent very different levels of capability and strategic messaging. Some missiles are short-range systems designed primarily for regional defense scenarios, while others are capable of traveling much longer distances and therefore carry broader strategic implications. Until radar tracking data, satellite monitoring results, and official intelligence assessments provide more clarity, analysts must rely on confirmed information rather than speculation about what specific weapons were used. The timing of the launch is also significant because the Freedom Shield exercises taking place between the United States and South Korea are among the largest joint training operations